Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? We don't need to teach children what adverbs are in school any longer. Perhaps we never did. How's that for controversial? I was talking to my girlfriend a little while ago, and she's a fourth grade school teacher, and we were talking about the various things that the children need to learn in school. And of course, I remember my own experience in grade school. If you can believe that, I can remember it. And, having to learn the various parts of speech and what have you, and stuff that's a little bit cryptic to a lot of children and to a lot of people. There's a couple of reasons I say this and why that's actually a much bigger issue. Is first, if you haven't read The Language Instinct by Steven Pinker, go pick up that book and read it. It's a phenomenal book. But part of what he talks about is that the research backs up this idea that language in human beings is an instinct. We automatically create a syntax out of nothing. If you look at populations of people that have been put into a certain area and that are all speaking different languages, the adults will speak a pidgin, where it's not a very, grammatically correct language, but they get their opinions or ideas across. And of course, they're using various words from different languages. However, their children will speak a Creole. And a Creole is this mixed language that has all these grammatical rules in it. It uses adverbs and adjectives correctly and has, very complex rules. These children didn't sit down and think, well, how do we make this work? This is how human brains work. This is how this language instinct is literally programmed into us. It's part of our genetic makeup, which is fascinating. Because of that, the average person doesn't need to know and study what the hell an adverb is or what an adjective is or what a preposition is, because they use them correctly. Even if they don't speak what you consider to be correct, King's English or whatever, if you take apart the grammar of any person, it works. But there's a different reason. There's a different reason. I remember, and maybe you remember this as well, if you're older like I am, the people will tell you, you think you're going to have a calculator with you all the time? You're going to have to learn this, basic addition and subtraction and arithmetic and all this kind of stuff. We do. We have them with us all the time. I, can't remember the last time I ever really did any complicated multiplication or even sometimes subtraction now if I'm doing my budgeting. I'm just constantly rechecking myself with a calculator, as most scientists would, because they don't trust themselves, and sometimes what they're doing is very, very important. A budget's really, really important too, because if you ever gotten an overdraft fee, you realize, boy, that was important to get it right. So we have all this this power, this processing power with us in terms of arithmetic and what have you. But now we have so much more available to us. We have an encyclopedia available to us at any time. I don't need to remember all these various facts that I did too as a child, or nobody else does, because they can look it up. You can look at things up on Wikipedia. Is the internet always 100% correct? No. Was what we were being taught always 100% correct? No. So there's all this information out there, and now it's gotten to the point where AI, and once again, I don't care what your opinion on AI is. It's more like what is actually happening right now. AI has gotten so good at some things that you can have it write simple things. The average person is never going to need to know how to write an essay, how to do, write an email, how to write a letter, all that kind of stuff. They're not going to need to know how to do it very well. And, Susan actually showed me this thing where you could have this AI they're using at school, or just using to do, some kind of assignments for kids. Well, I forget exactly what it was, but you can have this thing write a paper about a particular subject at whatever grade level you would like. I just wrote a review for a friend, or a friend just started a business and had experience with what they were doing. And they said, hey, could you do me a favor? Could you write me a review for the business? Because it's new, it's getting off the ground. I said, sure. So I was about to start writing a review, and I said, wait a minute. I opened up ChatGPT and said, help me write a short, glowing review for this type of business. Boom, it spits something out. I looked at it, made a correction or two, and pasted it to Google. It was perfect. I didn't have to spend the time doing it. This may shock you, this may upset you. I understand, but the point being is, it's the same thing as not needing to needing to know the multiplication tables perfectly and all that stuff, and now we don't need to know them. And this is sad, but this information is available to us instantly, and we can use our minds for other things. Kids can study what really appeals to them, and we as adults can do what really appeals to us, because I don't need to remember the multiplication tables. Now I don't necessarily need to remember all these various facts or know where to look them up, because I can find them on the internet pretty fast and go to the reputable sources for these things. And now it's at the point where if I have, need help writing something, and I just don't want to take the time to write it, like that glowing review, I can have it done. Also, a lot of the titles of my videos, I come up with something that's incredibly boring because that's the thing that comes to mind. And I, ask ChatGPT, can you write me some shorter, concise, more engaging, or different ways to say this? And it spits out a whole bunch, and I can pick one, I can alter it, all that sort of stuff. So now we're at this point where we don't need to have the same level of education and instruction and competence at essay writing, because it can be done for us. Because for some of us, it's absolutely important. If writing, like, to me, is like a really valuable skill, I don't want to have AI write all my stuff for me. Give me some ideas, maybe, or like check and say, could you say it a little bit differently? But I still like to write my own material. But the average person, well, that's not what they're doing for a living. That's not what floats their boat. But if they need to write even a thank you card or something like that, they can get ideas from AI and not have to think about it. And in actual language, everyday language, we have that instinct already. We already know how to speak. We already know how to speak correctly and speak grammatically correctly, which is pretty amazing. So it's one of those things that, yeah, I don't believe that these things need to be taught, and I don't believe that we need to concentrate on it as much as adults. So this allows us to let our kids study things that are more important, more relevant, because the world is changing really, really fast. And I still believe education ought to be like the Argonauts, what the Argonauts had. They all went to Charon, whatever his name was, the centaur. And they were taught the lyre and wrestling and philosophy and, all that kind of stuff. I really think education ought to be like that. And also where it's very holistic, very all-encompassing. And it ought to be geared towards what is a person really interested in? How can we help them do that? Because people are all different. And all the kids, just think of all the kids you knew and like what they were really interested in. Imagine if we had all been really encouraged to study the things that really got us excited. And then as different things got us excited, being able to, study those and to fit these standard subjects into that. What do I believe is important to teach kids? Critical thinking skills and the scientific method, super important. Logical fallacies, how to spot logical fallacies. Not so much debate, but how to think critically. That's a subject, a skill that's in very, very short supply. You know what I mean? Anyhow, these are just some thoughts that were coming to my mind, because we're concentrating, I believe, sometimes too much on I don't want to call them the fundamentals, but the basics. It's things that can be done for us. That may scare you. That may be unsettling. But there's so many things now that can be done for us that we don't need to concentrate on. And yes, if society all goes to hell, then of course we'll all need to know how to do all these other things like growing our own food and hunting and making our own shoes and what have you. But we've already specialized out of that, So I don't think the argument that you need to know all these basic skills holds water, because we've abandoned so many of them already. Most of us could not survive on our own if society went to hell. At this point, unless things really go to hell, now I believe more and more the future is going to be being able to see what you can have done for you so you can concentrate on what makes you happy and what can actually be relevant in today's society. Know what I mean, Jelly Bean? Have a good one.